down. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to be getting started here in just a few minutes. Wanted to do a quick sound check, make sure everyone can hear us okay. If you wouldn't mind just typing in the question and answer box, yes or no, so we know that people can hear us, that'd be great. Okay, well, thank you everyone again for joining us today. As you know, this is going to be an overview of our water quality data loggers. My name is Becky Fish. I am the application specialist for water quality and water level data loggers. We all kind of share responsibility for multiple different applications. My teammate over here, Shannon Ryerson, is going to host the majority of today's webinar and kind of talk through the slides, and together we will address your questions as well. There's a picture of yours truly, and again, my focus is on water quality and water level monitoring here at Onset, going on 6 years selling HOBO data loggers. Just to give you a quick kind of rundown of what this webinar will entail, it'll run for approximately 30 minutes. We have carved out some lead time so that we have plenty of time at the end for questions and answers. You can type your questions into the questions section of the control panel throughout the webinar, and we'll try to answer as many of those as we can during the session. Also, just to let you know, this webinar will be recorded, and a link to that recording will be emailed out to everyone who had attended. And again, today's presenter is going to be Shannon Ryerson, the technical sales representative here at Onset. He specializes in assisting different types of consultants and government agencies, as well as university clients and private organizations with their water quality and environmental needs.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the introduction, Becky. And as she mentioned, today we are going to be discussing water quality loggers. We're going to start off with a product overview, followed up by some features, benefits and software features. We're then going to go over the different types of water quality loggers we have. We'll follow that up with applications and application stories. And as Becky had mentioned, we'll save some time at the end for questions. So before we get into the presentation, I just wanted to give you a little overview on Onset. We are a worldwide leader in data loggers. We were founded in 1981, and we are located in Bourne, Massachusetts on beautiful Cape Cod. The picture you see here is our facility, and this is where our sales, marketing, engineering, and manufacturing teams are located. We have a global network of distributors, and our sole focus is on data logging and monitoring. So we'd just like to get a quick idea of who's in attendance today. We'd like to put up a poll question for everyone to answer.
I'm going to go ahead and launch the first poll question, which is basically to help us get an idea of whether you're currently using data loggers. So if you could each take a moment just to respond to the poll. We'll let that run for a couple of seconds here, get a good idea of the level of familiarity we have in our audience. So far, it looks like the majority of you are using HOBO data loggers, and the next largest percentage are using a combination of HOBO and other brand data loggers. Go ahead and manage this. And there is our, oh, I guess I'm not showing my screen. Can you go to the next slide? Oh, I'm not sure. Okay. Well, we have 49% that are using HOBO data loggers, and 21% that are using a different brand, and 35% that are using a combination of HOBOs and other brands of loggers. 9% are not using data loggers at all.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like we have a nice variety in attendance today. So, why use data loggers? Data logging allows us to measure short-term and long-term trends. We have a variety of sectors that we work with, from research scientists to government agencies, as well as educational institutes. There's a wide array of applications that our data loggers are used in, and it's kind of funny because every day I basically learn a new application in which our loggers are being applied to. And some common needs for data loggers are durability, high performance, the cost effectiveness, and their ease of use. So what are some of the water quality measurements we have? Depending on your application, you may require just one of these, or you may require multiple measurements that are taken. I want to point out on this slide, though, that we did not mention water level as a water quality measurement, even though it is. We did do a webinar last month that focused solely on water level, and that recording is available on our website for anyone who is interested in it. So we have a few different ways that you can communicate with our data loggers. The first option I'd like to go over is our Optic USB loggers. And how these work is you connect the logger to a shuttle or a base station, which is then connected to a computer, and you use our software to set up, configure, and launch the logger, as well as retrieve the data later on. The next option is our Bluetooth loggers. And these work with a Bluetooth-enabled mobile device within 100 feet line of sight using our app, and that's what you would use to set up, configure, launch, and retrieve the data as well. And finally, we have our web-based systems. This works off of Ethernet, Wi-Fi, or cellular, and it gives you the ability for remote access. So when using a USB Optic data logger, there's a few steps you need to take to operate it. The first is to configure and launch the logger. And as I mentioned, you connect the logger to a base station or a waterproof shuttle, and then that's connected to a computer that's running our HOBOware or HOBOware Pro software. Once you configure the logger, you need to launch it and then secure it in place. Most of the owner manuals give some suggestions and considerations you should take when securing these. After the deployment's done, you need to access the data and download it. Again, this can be done with a base station or a waterproof shuttle. And then from there, you would need to import it into our software for processing, analysis, and presenting the data. So as I mentioned, you can use a base station and our free software with our water quality data loggers. But when working with water quality loggers, it's definitely recommended to use the waterproof shuttle as well as our HOBOware Pro software. The last thing you want to hear when you're out on a boat or on a dock retrieving data off a logger is a laptop overboard. And one of the nice features about our waterproof shuttle is that it allows you to store up to 63 data loggers information. And again, this works off of our HOBOware Pro software, and it does have user replaceable AA batteries. Now, with our HOBOware Pro software, you have the ability for data assistance, and specifically in the conductivity and dissolved oxygen. You also have the ability to batch configure and read out data loggers, and basically what this means is batch configuration is basically a time-saving feature that allows for large quantities or groups of loggers to be configured with the same parameters. And again, we have quite a few videos on our resources page of our website that go into a little more depth of HOBOware and HOBOware Pro and its functionality. So now we're going to talk about using our Bluetooth-enabled data loggers. And again, as I mentioned before, you need to be in with about 100 feet line of sight with a Bluetooth-enabled mobile device. The Bluetooth does not work underwater. So, for example, the top right tidbit you see, that would need to be pulled out of the water in order to access its data. As you can see in the illustration below, the communication part of this logger is secured above the waterline to allow for communication with a mobile device within 100 feet line of sight. Now, this is a mounting technique you can't take into consideration if the application permits it. But one thing I'd like you to take into consideration is that the sensor must stay submerged the whole time. And again, our Bluetooth loggers utilize our HOBOmobile app. And this is a free download that can be found in the iTunes or the Google Play Store. And this is what you'd use to configure the logger, set it up, launch it, and as well as retrieve the data. It does give you options to view graphs within the app, and you also have the ability to share this data afterwards, whether it's an XLS file, CSV file, or a text file. You also have the ability to export it as a .HOBOware file, where you can then import it into HOBOware Pro for additional plotting and analysis. And finally, we have our web-based systems. Our web-based systems allow for remote configuration, data access, and instant alarm notifications. And basically what alarms are is you can set up alarm within a sensor's parameter, and once that threshold is exceeded, you will receive an alarm via the method you chose, whether it's text message or email. We also have an optional analog module which can be added to this, and this will allow you to connect third-party cabled sensors such as pH, dissolved oxygen, conductivity, and salinity. And again, as I mentioned before, we offer these in both cellular, Wi-Fi, or Ethernet options. Now, our web-based systems use our cloud-based software called HOBOware. And this you can access from any computer or smartphone or a mobile device that's connected to the internet. And from here, you get your graph readouts, you get your ability to export the data, as well as share the information with other parties. So now that we've learned a little bit about data loggers, we'd like to ask another poll question.
Where do you plan to deploy water quality data loggers? This time I'm going to try and close down the results slide sooner. Sorry about that, everyone. Okay, so far we've got the majority using them in streams and rivers. The next largest amount is other. Give it just a few more seconds. Okay. I'm going to share the results, and as you can see, we have the majority of folks using them in streams and rivers, the next largest amount using them in other deployment locations, then lakes and then oceans. So thank you very much for your feedback there.
Great, yeah, thank you for sharing that. So what are some of the advantages of using our HOBO water quality data loggers? Well, first off, they're easy to use. They also offer high quality. They are reusable with a lot of our loggers seeing battery life from 1 to 6 years. They are encased in durable housing, so they're okay to be deployed in the harsh environment of the ocean. And also, our software provides easy logger setup, data offload, and graphing and analysis. So let's talk about some of our HOBO water temperature loggers. As you can see here, we offer quite a few different types of temperature loggers, and this is just a few of them. There's a lot more that we have to offer as well. And there's a few things that you need to take into consideration when purchasing water temperature loggers. One of the first ones being the battery life. If you're planning on deploying this for an extended period of time, the life of the battery should certainly be taken into consideration. Like I mentioned, most of our loggers do see between 1 to 6 years of battery life. Another thing you want to take into consideration is where is this going to be deployed? Is this going to be just under the surface of the water, or is this going to be a deep ocean deployment? Because the deeper the water obviously means that there's higher pressure. So a good example is the logger on the very end, the Tidbit V2, that's actually encased in an epoxy, so that can handle high pressures, which means it can go deeper into the water. Another thing to take into consideration is how accurate do you need these to be? Although all of our data loggers are very accurate, the higher accuracy typically means a higher price. So that's something you certainly want to take into consideration. The next type of loggers we have are our water temperature and light loggers. And again, these are encased in durable housings, so they can be deployed in both freshwater and saltwater. With these, we have two options. We have a Bluetooth loggers, and we also have our Optic USB loggers. One of the nice features about both of these is that they do offer user replaceable batteries. I would like to point out that the light accuracy sensor in the MX2202, which is the top one on the left, has been improved over the UA-002, which is the logger on the right. Here we have our conductivity and salinity logger. And as you can see, we offer this in two different models, a freshwater and a saltwater version. And this is where HOBO Pro actually comes into play. We do offer a data assistance for HOBO in HOBOware Pro for calculating conductivity and salinity. Again, this logger is encased in a durable housing, so we do have both a freshwater and a saltwater version of it. The data is offloaded via our USB optical interface, and you can see you'll have a typical battery life of about 3 years with this, and they are factory replaceable. And we also offer a protective cap for the communications window. So when this is deployed, you don't have to worry about the lens getting scratched or damaged. You just put this little protective cap over it, and it'll help alleviate that. And here's a screenshot of our conductivity data assistant I mentioned that's within HOBOware Pro. As you can see, there's really just a few calculations you need to input, and basically this data assistant does the rest of the work for you. You can use a field meter readings for calibration of the conductivity data, as well as start and endpoint calibration points to compensate for any fouling that may have occurred during the deployment. Next, we have our dissolved oxygen logger, and this uses the RDO basic sensor technology. These are affordably priced, so it makes it practical to take measurements at multiple points and depths. And I also want to point out with this that it actually does take a temperature reading as well. We do have a dissolved oxygen data assistance within HOBOware Pro, and this one does have a factory replaceable battery, and again, you'll see about 3 years battery life out of it, but it does have a user replaceable DO sensor cap and also an optional anti-biofouling copper guard. And again, here's a screenshot of the dissolved oxygen data assistant, and this basically will calculate your salinity adjusted dissolved oxygen. It can't calculate the percent saturation, but this does require a barometric pressure reading. And there's actually a couple ways you can get this. If there's a local weather station that's within about 10 miles of your site, you can just get the barometric pressure reading for that. Or the other option is to take one of our water level loggers and just hang it in the air at the site, and you'll be able to record the barometric pressure that way. You can also use a field calibration meter to adjust for any special conditions or compensate for fouling. And here we have our Bluetooth pH and temperature data logger. This works off of our HOBOmobile platform. So again, you'd use a mobile device within 100 feet line of sight to set up, configure, launch the logger, as well as retrieve the data afterwards. This is encased in a rugged PVC housing, so it can be deployed in both freshwater and saltwater environments. One of the cool features about this is it actually has a water detection system on it. So if for some reason you deploy this where the water dries up, it's going to go into a low power mode to help save on battery life. Speaking of battery life, this one actually has a user replaceable battery with it, and you'll see anywhere between 1 to 3 years out of battery life. It also has a user replaceable pH electrode, as well as an optional anti-biofouling copper guard. And what we see here is an exploded animation view showing the different internal components, such as the user replaceable pH electrode, the water detection node, the temperature sensor, the negative buoyancy sensor, the user replaceable battery, as well as the PVC housing. So now that we've learned a little bit about our loggers, we'd like to talk about some common methods for deploying these. The first one you see on the right is a stilling well, and this is typically used for when you're doing water level monitoring. Basically, you'd attach the sensor to a well cap, and then, the communication portion to a well cap, and then you'd hang down the sensor point to the water level. A Teflon coated stainless steel cable or something of that nature. There are some things you want to take into consideration when mounting these. It's always good to choose a location with good water mixing, such as in a riffle, to avoid stagnant water. If you're trying to measure stagnant water, by all means, feel free to do that. You also want to be sure that the sensor will remain completely submerged. You want to avoid solar heating, so it's a good idea to either mount these under a canopy shade or make sure that they're deep enough where solar heating doesn't become an issue. And you also want to ensure that the sensor does not touch the bottom or touch any other large thermal mass. You also want to make sure that you mark the location of where these loggers are so that you're able to find them when you go back to retrieve the data. Another method we have is our cinder block method. Some advantage to this is that they're less visible. This reduces vandalism and also reduces the curiosity. It also keeps it out of the way of boat traffic. But again, you definitely want to make sure that you use some type of marker or landmark or record a GPS coordinate so you know where these data loggers are when you go back to retrieve them. So why monitor water quality? Well, you want to ensure that you are in compliance with the water quality standards of your location. Water quality can be affected by many factors such as agricultural runoff, factory discharge, urban development, and road runoff. It is important to measure and treat this before it reaches the oceans or waterways and has adverse effect on our aquatic vegetation or marine life. And it's also important to make sure that we're taking multiple measurements along the water source, just not in one spot. And our cost-effective water loggers give you the flexibility to do this. Now I'd just like to briefly share an application story with you where our dissolved oxygen logger was used to track the DO in an endangered mussel habitat. So why is DO an important measurement to take? Well, the amount of DO in a body of water is an indicator of its health. High DO correlates with high biological productivity, and low DO means that there's low biological productivity. So down in northern Georgia, they're actually looking to build a new freshwater reservoir. But before Lake McIntosh could be built, the Fayette County Water System had to assure the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that this new reservoir would not affect the endangered mussels living in that area. So Chris and his team at CCR Environmental started measuring the temperature in the DO in the creek downstream from this proposed reservoir site. And how they did this is that the team would basically travel out to the site weekly before dawn and take spot checks using a handheld probe. This obviously can be very time-consuming and is not really a cost-effective method to do this. So he quickly converted to using our U26 dissolved oxygen logger, which enabled them to download the data from this logger every 4 to 5 weeks. Now, this is beneficial because being able to leave your data logger deployed for an extended period of time really gives you a full circle of the data. So, as expected, the lowest levels were seen in the midsummer, and that's because this is when the creek flow is at its lowest and the temperature is at its highest. Think of this as how cold water holds more dissolved gases than warm water does. And Chris had said that we can see the highs and the lows, and we can see the diurnal cycle now too. And to confirm that, just before dawn is indeed the time of the lowest dissolved oxygen. And it was reassuring to him that he was able to confirm that that is there. So the data they collected shows the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services how reduced stream flow would affect DO and by extension the organisms in the stream. One of the nice things was that this data actually served as a baseline data for the habitat comparison post-construction of the Lake McIntosh Dam. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services did require long-term monitoring and of the DO associated with the flow releases from the dam, and that monitoring does continue to be performed today for the Fayette County water system by CCR. Having this information that was logged from my data loggers allows them to take the proper precautions when they do these water releases. So with that, I'd like to show you where our resources page is on our website. This is where you can find more information on the short story I just shared with you, along with additional application stories. We also have the knowledge base, which is a searchable database of all product support documentation and forum posts. We have a solution search option, which allows you to search for solutions based on the application. And we also have additional webinars and courses. And these are detailed training courses on Onset's hardware and software products, and we're continuing to add new presentations to it daily. And with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions from the audience.
Thank you, Shannon, and thank you, everyone, for joining. I have been trying to respond to questions as they've been coming in here on the GoToWebinar portal. A lot of really good questions. There was a couple earlier on that I received in the portal between slides, so I'm not 100% sure which model was being referred to, but there was a question about the depth, and I think that was related to the slide about the water temperature data loggers when Shannon was talking about the tidbit, which is coated in epoxy and therefore is able to withstand higher pressures at a deeper depth. So the original UTBI tidbit that is supported by the communication optical to USB communication device and HOBOware Pro software is rated down to 1,000 foot depth. And the newer version of that, the Bluetooth deep ocean tidbit, which is also in epoxy, is rated down to 5,000 foot depth. So anyway, that I hope answers the depth question. Someone had also asked about, how they will withstand long-term deployments, saltwater deployments. Again, I'm not sure exactly which logger that was referring to, but I can tell you that all of our loggers are used in both fresh and saltwater environments, as well as brackish water environments. In the case of the U20, U20L, MS 2001 water level data loggers, the U20L is housed in polypropylene, which is a very durable industrialized plastic that can be used in salt or fresh water. The U20 is available, as well as the MS 2001, in stainless steel or titanium. We typically do recommend titanium for saltwater deployments, especially long-term saltwater deployments. And if you want the most durable option for water level to be deployed very long-term in salt water, we would always steer you toward one of the titanium options. Let's see what else we have here. A lot of good questions, thank you. What options and prices are offered? We have, as you can see from this presentation, several different options, especially for water temperature and water level. It's a little bit too much to get into detail about prices over this webinar right now. However, if you go to our website, you can click a number of different ways. Maybe, Shannon, are you able to get out of this and bring up a web browser, perhaps? Maybe we can just get you to our website so we can show you a couple easy ways to look up information such as pricing, specifications, as well as white papers and tutorial videos. So Shannon showed you about the resources tab, which is where you can find a lot of great product information and user guides. If you go over, for instance, and click on water, you can scroll down here and pick by, frequently, popular models or measurements. Let's just click on temperature for the sake of this example. Now you can go through, you can click on any of these models. If you want to just select one, Shannon. This way you can see the actual list price. You can scroll down the page. This is the same with every web page for every product that we sell. Specifications are all listed down at the bottom. If you go back up a little bit, Shannon, you can click on compatible items to see what may be required and or just available as an accessory. Then if you click on the documentation tab, that's where you would find the user manual, frequently asked questions, and other user guides. And then, of course, the resources tab contains a wealth of information in terms of upcoming live webinars, recorded webinars, how-to videos, white papers, you name it. So if you just scroll up a little bit more one more time, Shannon, this is where you can always find the part number and the list price for each individual model that you might be interested in. GPS, we do not yet have products with GPS that GPS is natively available with. It's definitely something that we're looking at, so certainly do continue to check in with us, please, on that. How deep is safe for the sensors rated for depth? I think you're probably talking about water level loggers here. If so, we have models available for 13-foot range, 30-foot range, 100-foot range, and 250-foot range. Now, keep in mind, that doesn't mean from the bottom of the lake or the ocean to the top water level. That is the range of water level variance in which you want to monitor the pressure. And again, these are ranges. So you might get marginally less accuracy if you're using a 100-foot depth logger that's calibrated with a pressure transducer that's calibrated for that range, and you're only monitoring depth within a 3-foot variance. However, it's still going to be pretty accurate. We would probably just recommend that you maybe try to use a 13-foot depth range, since that's going to give you the best possible accuracy for those more shallow depth ranges. And if you're talking about the temperature loggers, I think my previous answer would have addressed that with regard to the deep ocean models of the two different tidbits. Protection plans, warranties. Every product that we sell, for the most part, as long as it's a serialized product, does include a 1-year warranty as standard, free of charge. We do offer the option of extended 2, 3, 4, or longer year warranties, and the price is basically 10% of the total product list cost for each year of extended warranty you want on top of that free first-year warranty. Removed data that is pre- and post-deployment. I'm not sure I understand this question. When you deploy the logger and then go back to read it out, you have the option, particularly with the waterproof data shuttle, to relaunch and basically start recording, from, from square one. That's something you could do in the software configuration. Makes it pretty easy to just start recording, kind of frees up the memory for more data. Again, I'm not sure I understand that question, so please, our contact information is at the end here. You can get in touch with us if you need to call or email one of us directly. Do not hesitate. We want to make sure we're getting your questions answered sufficiently. How many third-party probes can we link together for a single download? That's a really good question. So I believe this is referring to the remote monitoring system, which is a multi-channel data logger that can be configured with an analog module or a pulse input adapter to accept those outputs from third-party sensors, which may not be HOBO proprietary smart sensors. For the analog channels, you have a maximum capacity of 8 per RX3000. So that means that you could have a third-party DO sensor, a third-party water level sensor, a third-party pH sensor, and up to 5 more sensors connected into the analog modules on the system, in addition to up to 15 smart sensors. Keep in mind that the pulse input adapter is a smart sensor for us, so that's going to occupy one of those regular 15 smart sensor channels if you are using a third-party sensor that has a pulse output. Wave height. We get this question a lot with a water level sensor. The answer is you could probably get an idea, but it's not really what it's designed for. You probably want to look more at an actual tilt measurement device or a wave height measurement device, depending on the actual specifications around the wave height application. I'm not 100% sure that this product would work, but I know that one provider of an instrument that is typically used specifically for wave height is Lowell Instruments. That's Lowell. Again, we'll be following up with each of you, and you have our contact information, so please do not hesitate to call or email us if you want to elaborate on that question. One moment to measure all the parameters. Okay, so this is a very good question. A lot of folks ask us if we have one multi-parameter logger that can be used to monitor multiple different parameters. We all know that there are the YSI, Xylem, as well as in situ multi-parameter sondes out there. Onset has sort of taken the approach to the market that we want to maintain really low cost, highly accurate, extremely durable, and easy to use instrumentation. What we're finding is that there's such a variety of different applications, some that require multiple parameter measurements and some that require just 1 or 2. We want to make devices that are affordable for the customer to be able to buy what they specifically need. So you could still get a DO logger, a pH logger, a conductivity logger, a water level logger, and maybe several temperature loggers have in different locations that are all supported on, that are all kind of cross-platform support by the software for a less expensive price than you would get a multi-parameter sonde. They're easier to maintain, and there's also applications where it warrants using both individual data loggers for that long-term continuous data set in addition to a multi-parameter sonde for more short-term data sets for cross-reference. So the answer to that question is no, we do not currently have an all-in-one device. However, we do have a very cost-efficient, easy way to monitor multiple parameters. Let's see what else we have here. Some of these are very similar to ones we've already had. So does the data plan through Onset cover multiple loggers? If this is with regard, I'm assuming, to the RX3000 remote monitoring system for web-based administration, the way that is designed in terms of the data service plan is on an annual basis per system. The reason for that is because we have customers that, buy RX3000 1 year, they skip a year, they buy more. It's really challenging, as you can imagine, to prorate all of those plans to just one cellular service. So we do the plans per system, and the annual plans range from free for low-use Wi-Fi and Ethernet plans up to, I think the most expensive plan is $350 per year per system for a high-use cellular plan. All right, so there's other questions here that are actually very detailed, and they definitely warrant one of us speaking with you directly, not really the right platform to address during the webinar. High resolution water level sensor for measuring evaporation. That's an interesting an interesting request. I will definitely forward that along to our product management team for their review and consideration. I don't know that we have something like that in the works right now, but when I say that we submit these NPRs, which stands for New Product Requests, we really do log them, document them, and they really do get looked at by product management and eventually filtered up to engineering. Is there a waterproof shuttle, a wireless method to extract the data from the loggers? Okay, so the waterproof shuttle is the option is the option that would be required with our Optic to USB data loggers. So if you're using one of the original water temperature loggers, the DO logger, or the conductivity salinity logger, or the U20 or U20L water level logger, those all require an Optic to USB communication device in the way of a base station or a data shuttle. You do not need both. We strongly recommend the data shuttle pretty much for all of our water quality data loggers. Again, Shannon mentioned you're out there in the field, you're taking loggers out of the water, offloading them, dropping them back in most of the time. A shuttle will enable you to connect the logger while it's still wet. You can even submerge the waterproof shuttle in the water and couple it up to the logger to offload it and relaunch it. You can also do this without having to have a computer connection. The base station is an okay solution if you have very limited budget and you're planning to deploy data loggers for a period of time, pull them out, bring them all back to your office, hook them up via the base station to your computer, download the data, and then redeploy them again the following year. The data shuttle also is compatible only with HOBOware Pro software, and the HOBOware Pro version is required for most of the water quality data loggers because of those conductivity, dissolved oxygen, and water level data assistants, which are required for those particular loggers. Those data assistants are only available in the Pro version. So the long answer to your question is that the data shuttle isn't wireless and that it's extracting data from the logger wirelessly, but you can use it wirelessly in terms of not having to have the shuttle connected to a computer, whereas the base station does require you to have a connection to the computer during configuration and during data download. The base station is also not waterproof, so you would have to dry off the loggers before you connect them and download the data. The batteries, the pH data logger are user replaceable. Great question. Waterproof shuttle will hold data from up to 63 loggers before the memory will fill and needs to be offloaded. Question about the pH electrode, and I guess there's a spec sheet on our website that the electrode life is 6 months. That's not really a steadfast spec. That's an average spec based on our recommendation for best guideline in terms of maintenance and quality of the electrode. We certainly, would hope that users are checking the loggers. We typically recommend every few weeks, if not every 7 to 10 days during the first couple of months of deployment, just so that you can get a good gauge for what degree of fouling, at what rate is occurring. In freshwater deployments, you can probably go a little bit longer without checking them. In saltwater or wastewater environments, we recommend that you try to check them more frequently in those early 2 to 3 months of deployment. From there, you can get an idea of how frequently you really need to get out and service the loggers and clean that electrode and make sure everything's working properly and you're still getting accurate readings. You might, in that point, you're most likely be able to space out your visits. We have customers with such a range of applications that some of them are going out every 2 to 3 weeks to clean the electrode, and they're actually getting, some good lifetime out of it, 4, 5, 6 months. We have some customers that have deployed these in a freshwater environment. They've been out there a couple times in 3 or 4 months, and the electrode's working perfectly fine. And then, of course, we also have people that are using the pH logger in wastewater environments, or acid mine drainage is a very interesting application for the pH logger, and they really need to get out there and service it every 2 weeks or so, and they probably will need to replace that electrode after 6 months or so. So I wish there was one answer for all applications and all environments, but there truly is not. So we just ask that you, try to create a good gauge during that first few months of deployment. How often should the remote download loggers be manually inspected? So the great thing about the remote monitoring system is that the HOBOlink Service Cloud tells you a lot, not only about data, but actually about the system itself. Battery life, how much voltage is remaining in terms of power, all kinds of different information. So you really don't need to visit the site that often to manually inspect the system, as long as you have it secured, well secured into the ground, especially if it's in a very tumultuous environment where there's a lot of storm activity, and you're able to, access the web on a regular basis to check the status of the system and make sure everything is working properly, you'll be in good shape. We have customers that have these systems deployed literally at the North Pole, and they get up there once or twice a year to manually, look at the system and maybe change out a sensor if it appears that something had failed after a very extreme weather event. It's extremely durable, NEMA rated, weatherproof enclosures. These systems really do withstand the elements well. Email copy of PowerPoint. So I don't know that we would actually be able to email the PowerPoint only because it's company proprietary, but we will definitely be sending out a link to a recorded version of this webinar, so you'll be able to see all of the slides that way. And again, I welcome you to call or email me or Shannon anytime with specific questions. I'm happy to help as much as needed, maybe needed. I think I have one final question here. How often should water level loggers be manually inspected for accuracy and maintenance? I'm going to go back to that guideline I mentioned previously. It may be a little bit conservative, but I always like to err on the side of safety. I recommend getting out to check your loggers, if possible, once every 7 to 10 days, at least every 2 to 3 weeks in the first 2 months of deployment. You'll get a really good idea very quickly whether you need to be getting out there on a fairly frequent basis, or you'll be able, to maybe leave them deployed for a few months, go back and check after a few months then. If it looks like they're doing okay, wait another 90 days or even stretch it out a little bit more. Folks have had our loggers, that are being deployed and uploaded and redeployed several times over 3, 5, 10, and even more years. So they're really tried and true. And again, we've been in business since 1980, so definitely have some good, reliable products out there. I think I got most of your questions. I want you to be rest assured that we will definitely do our best to follow up with every individual question that was not addressed during the webinar. If your question wasn't answered, it's likely because there's something a little bit more individually specific that needs to be discussed. If you don't hear from Shannon or I in the next 1 or 2 days, again, please take down our contact information, call or email us. We will always respond within 24 hours. Thank you very much, everyone. We really appreciate your time today. And happy HOBO. Have a good day.
Have a great day.